Hey, welcome back to the Seats to Streets podcast. I'm one of your hosts, J.R. Horn, and this series called Church After Lockdown is an amazing conversation that's being taken place right now. How do we do church after COVID lockdown? Is this the new normal? Is online church sticking around? And what are the lessons learned after all of this? We want to have that conversation with you coming up on this current series of the Seats to Streets podcast. And we also want to let you know about an awesome new podcast sponsor. That's Pioneer Bible Translators. With prayer as their strategy, Pioneer Bible Translators seeks to see transformed lives through God's word in every language. I'd encourage you to go over to pioneerbible.org and to be able to check them out and to see what an awesome sponsor of this podcast that they are. So for now, enjoy this series. Hey, welcome back to the Seats to Streets podcast. I am J.R. Horn. That guy's Brian Gorman, and we're here with you for the next 20 or 30 minutes. I know you're excited. I'm excited. I love hanging out with Brian. Don't you guys like hanging out with Brian? Well,
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, leave a comment below
There's a
exactly
list.
how much you like hanging out with Brian. I like hanging out with Brian. But we're glad you're tuning in. Glad you're here to this series that we are calling Church Post COVID. Not that COVID is gone, but more on the lockdown part of it. Church post COVID. Now that we've gone through lockdown, how has that changed things? And last week we kind of talked on Brian. We talked on this weird word, these weird two words like new normal.
Yeah.
That often gives ministers panic attacks. And I would venture to say maybe today's conversation is slightly on par with that panic attack thing. Maybe to some, to me, not so much, but I don't know. We'll
I
see.
think it's something that what we're going to be talking about is something that churches were in panic mode and
Yeah.
have now kind of moved into cruise control. And the real question is, should they still be there? What do you do? And so, Jared, what's our theme? What's the topic for today?
So the question we're going to address, maybe not answer, we're going to address because you have to answer it. You're the hero. We're the coaches. You know your people, you know your setting, you know your culture, you know what needs to be done. We're lobbing this out. So here's the question we want to put in the middle of the room today: is online church here to stay? Is online church here to stay? Now, Brian, 2020 hit and churches just went into a tailspin. Like we can't meet together, we can't be together. How do we do church? What does that look like? And it within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the amount of information, innovation, and forward progressive movement for online streaming shot through the roof. Entire companies just started to be able to help churches be able to get their service online for their people to see. And that's created sort of a rhythm. And we know some churches that lasted 4 months ish, maybe 6 months. Some churches it lasted a longer, well over a year of being in distance and having a distance worship setting. And now when you do it for so long, it's kind of all right, it's got some momentum behind it. It's got some things to where we need to ask the question: is this here to stay? Is this something we need to keep doing, or is it hey, we're good? Hospitals are dropping their mask mandates, even be in the hospital. That means let's just head back to 9:30 and 11 and be done, right? So, Brian, I was going to lobby it over to you first. What do you think? Is online church here to stay?
Well, I think the first question that churches need to answer for themselves is, are we trying to create an online church or an online campus, or are we trying to create a video worship service to be able to watch and participate in? And I think there's a difference between those two, right? So we have a pretty defined group of people that are on our online service every single week. They engage with it. They're connected to it, right? And almost all those people are primarily shut-ins, or people that have health concerns. I mean, there's a ton of people that are online only people. I struggle because the way that we do it to call that group a church. They're just an expansion of. right?
Right.
But we have a lot of other things within our church to help those people plug in. We have some people who live in Oklahoma who are part of what we do, some people out of like the New England area who are part of what we do on a regular basis, who participate in a lot of our online things. We still have online life groups that go on. I still
Nationwide,
do
baby.
a daily teaching online. So those things are there.
Sure.
But there is a difference between an online church
Mm.
and an online service. And so I think that's an important question to ask. Online church means you need to make sure you've got someone who is in charge of the pastoral care of that environment. It means you're
Right.
making sure those people are plugging in. You're finding a way to get names, which if you use YouTube is really challenging to do. If you only function in the online church, churches online, the different websites that exist just for that. And that's the
Hmm.
only way you can get it. Great for online church, bad for online service,
Right.
right? But if, on the other hand, you're trying to create an online service, hey, we want people to be able to see and participate with what we're doing. That's a different conversation when it comes to the kind of resources and stuff that are poured into that. And then the third option is, nah, we're just moving away from the online altogether. We want people in the building. We really don't spend any time, energy, or focus. And in some churches, many churches actually stopping the online altogether. And I think that's the
Right.
first question that churches have to ask. I'm going to share my opinion in this, and that is, I believe in today's world to not have an online, at least an online service, is going to serve to the detriment of your
Mhm.
church. If for no other reason, let's just be really honest about where we are. If you're listening to this primarily in the United States, Dark Brian, there is still a business aspect to what we do. If every other car company out there puts airbags in their cars and you go, yeah, we don't really think that's a big deal. I know people had those for a while, but it's not like required. It's just nice that they have that,
Right.
right? People will begin to move away from your car. If we're not going to bother with the seatbelts anymore, right? People will move
Nah.
away from your car. Even in the world where we say, hey, we're not going to advertise. Like the only people that pulled that off for a long time was no ad sunscreen, right? And if those of us who were around in the 90s, especially, like no ad sunscreen was this gargantuan, like Costco size bottle of sunscreen. And it was called no ad because they didn't do any advertising. That was the advertising, was they weren't going to
Wow.
advertise, but you got a gargantuan bottle really cheap. They didn't spend the money on the marketing. But I think many of us at one point or other have seen restaurants that we thought were amazing, but because they didn't advertise well, they didn't let people know they existed. They were
Yep.
purely working off of word of mouth. Other people would go other places. And so that's the only thing I'm suggesting is many people will want to see what the experience is going to be like before they go the first time, and to
Yep.
not have something in an online environment. There's a lot of other benefits, but just with that one alone,
I
if
agree.
they don't know it, they won't know. If you don't have a website, most people won't go to your church, right?
I
If you
agree.
don't have some form of online presence, and in today's world where many of the other churches around your community do, when someone new comes into your community, they're going to watch a collection of services in your community and kind of make a decision based off of that. We just know that from our experience here. The way that I've explained it is, most people, their first time in our church is their third or fourth time of engaging with our church, because they've watched multiple services, not just as it used to be sermons. Used to be, you listen
Right.
to the sermons on their podcast. They want to see the music, they want to see the experience, they want to see what it's like. So I think it's important to have at least an online service. Online church, that's more of an individual decision for your church.
Mhm.
But I think anything less than that, you're hurting yourself without realizing it. Um, and I would argue to take that one step further, like you mentioned, man. I was a guy, and I'm telling you, this is a guy who back in February of 2020 said we are never going to be showing our services online. Like I
Right.
told a person that point blank, we are never going to do that, and here's all the reasons
Right.
why.
Right.
Right. A few months later, we are spending thousands of dollars on cameras and switchers and things that I didn't even know existed at the time, right? We're spending
Right.
a ton of money on these things. So now we have these resources. And what I found is a lot of churches that put their money into those went, whoo, all right, we can chill now. But If you do that same thing when it comes to your music, right? Hey, we're not going to
Right.
bother changing out any more amps. We're not going to, fix any speakers. We're not going to improve our sound quality, right? Before long, there's going to be a struggle there,
Mm-hmm.
right? In anything that you do, if you're not focusing on it, it is moving toward deterioration.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of my pitch for it. I'm not saying you got to be driving the pedal to the floor like a car, but you definitely want to make sure you're not just sort of slowly coasting it to death.
Right. And I would agree with you on a lot of it. When I think the stigma behind online church or church online, whatever you want to call it, um, is that it's unfamiliar. Like this isn't something
Mm.
that I've been trained to do. I mean, how many times have we, Brian, you and I have been classically trained as pastors? Like this is how you write a sermon. This is how you visit the shut-ins. This is how you go have a pastoral visit at a hospital. This is how you do a baptism. And all the countless hours spent in classes learning how to exegete the Bible correctly. One of the things that was never told to us is how do we continue to progress and innovate as the world around us changes? In
Yeah.
1993 is when the internet was made, public. The first public web browser code was released. That for me, that was 10 years after I was born. So there's some faint memories of what life was like before the internet. But I still remember the first time we got dial up and memorizing the sounds that the modem would make.
Mm-hmm.
Now my kid, my oldest is 13. He'll never know what that sound is like unless it's a part of a meme.
Yeah.
That's it, right? He'll never know what that sound is like unless it's a part of some sort of meme or on Fortnite or something like that.
But in church world,
Because
we historically run 10 to 20 years behind our culture.
way behind. And it's scary because we just don't have the familiarity with it. How many
Right.
pastors, Brian, I know this is the same way. If you're tuning in for the first time, Brian is a local pastor in Wisconsin. He leads a church there. And Brian, I know that when the doors were shut and your normal was kind of taken away of being able to interact with people, kind of gauge how that went, how things are going, it's filled with anxiety. That hurts.
Yeah.
And then to be
Yeah.
able to, I got to sit and look at this camera, like I got to preach to a camera for 30 minutes. Where's my people? I can't do that with the same inflection and tone and excitement. It's it is absolutely way outside of wheelhouses and threw everybody into a tailspin. So, do I believe that how we did online church during COVID lockdown is here to stay? Uh, no.
No.
What
So
what
let
what
me ask this
what online
real
church
quick.
looks like here moving forward is something completely different. But we can't abandon it like we're starting to do now.
Like, I think now, like, if I knew then what I know now, right?
Sure.
One of the things I would have changed if we could have gone back and redone it is uh, we did all of our services when we were not in person. We did all of our services pre-recorded and put
Yeah.
them out.
Hmm.
One thing I think I would have done different now is I would have had two screens sitting in front of me and I would have done it live so that I can
Mm.
see who was watching live, see their
Oh,
names come in, be able to. I think that's something I would have done different, so that we could engage a little more in this very personal way, in
so
the way
there
that I
is
do
some
in my
interaction.
morning study, right, where people can ask questions live in that moment. Now, again, in my
Yep.
church, people can text in questions in our service and we'll answer them. But that would be something I would have done different if I could have gone back and done it. But that also has shown me, though, something that has two benefits of the online environment that are really worth, I would say, worth really leaning into right now. One of them is, in the past, when your people left for vacation, they were gone, right? And what
Yeah.
we would usually try to do is encourage them to find a church in the community they were on
Yep.
vacation in, right? And
Hmm.
I still do that, but I am amazed at how many of our people are, in the past, would have just skipped church altogether. Well, we were
Hmm.
driving, right? They would have
Right.
skipped church altogether. Oh, we were out of town. And now it's really been fascinating to me how many people are gone for the weekend and will come back and tell me what we did on Sunday, because this is their church. And it's a way they're engaging even when they're driving in the van with their family that they would have never done before. I think that's the first one that's a big deal. The other one that I think is really a big deal, and maybe in some churches, at least in my experience, might be a bit of a missed opportunity here. Okay. Something to consider. The church pre-COVID, the vast majority of them, I'd say 95% as a completely made up number.
60% of the time it works every time.
Exactly. If you weren't in the building, preacher, if you're pastor, if you're not preaching, and you showed a video of your sermon, people would have lost it over that. But today, if you're not in the building, there is the ability. I'm not saying it's a good long-term plan, but if you needed to go away on vacation, or you got sick all of a sudden, there is the capacity now, for the first time ever, to make a really good recording of your sermon, play it in the service during the sermon portion, and people, after a few moments, won't think anything of it again.
No.
So it provides pastors a chance to have a little more ability to be gone if they need to. I'm fortunate in my church. I've got a handful of really skilled communicators. We've done some training to help them understand how we want it done in our setting and in our environment, so that it still sort of looks and feels like us, even when I'm not there. And yet it's still beneficial to put some of those elements in. In our church, where we take communion every week, we have the ability to once in a while have our communion thought on video rather than done in person. It gives you, pastor, the chance to do a couple of illustrations on location.
Right.
Like I can go shoot outside of a used car lot, for example, or outside of a home that's being renovated, to talk about what it is to be made new, that I was in the past was going to be a whole lot harder to pull off. Now the people are okay with those components. And now you have most churches have some form of resources through the equipment to be able to do that, where in the past, wouldn't it be cool? So I think that's a key component of maybe two opportunities that are really important for us to be thinking about, and why to sort of stay on the gas ourselves, so that we can be providing care and pastoral connection with the members of our church family who aren't here this week, but who will be with us. And pastor, it provides you a little freedom that, again, it's not a long-term, it's not an every time, but it provides you a little bit of freedom to say, man, I got sick on Thursday. I know I'm not going to be feeling good by Sunday, and I can't just look at someone and go, hey, wing it.
Yep. A little more freedom than what you had, for sure.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that stands out to me, Brian. I look on dozens of church websites just to see what things, how they're listing certain specific things, how you are redirecting pages. What does it look like to interact? How hard is it to get to specific pages? I know for me, I'm a people person. I want to see people's faces. So how hard is it for me to be able to get to your staff page? I'd like to be able to see that. What I've noticed, there's it's not a trend. It's not it's not necessarily a trend. It's more of the boat kind of went sailing and no one's kind of watching it sail off and just drifting. That even though because of the internet, because of smartphones, because of COVID lockdown, our church websites and our social media pages, it's as if they didn't improve at all. Our rate of posting did. The amount of clip art we put up was 3 times the amount before lockdown. But it's not good. Like it doesn't look good for me when answering the question. Is online church here to stick around? The way we did it during lockdown, no. But what does online church look like moving forward? Your online church perspective, or what you look like online, has to go through the roof. There is no way around it. There's a study I was reading on just what has Google done. What is having a computer in our pocket where we can look up everything? What has it done to us? And one of the negative things that we've actually done is our rate of memory retention of maybe some small menial things has just absolutely dropped because I can just look it up again. You know, I was actually fixing. I got a van that a friend of mine gave to me. It needed some engine work, and I'm fixing up to be able to give it away to someone. And I've taken the serpentine belt off 3, 4, 5 times now. I still have to look up the order in which it goes around each pulley because I'm not confident in what I looked at. So when it comes to Google, when it comes to online, when it comes to eating out and dining, check this out. There was a survey done in 2019. There's a survey that was done for how do people interact with restaurants prior to coming to the restaurant. And what this specific it's on restaurantdive.com. What the specific study found out is that 77% of diners will visit the church website before they dine in or order out of the establishment. 3/4. 3/4. Now, as a guy who's I would still consider myself a foodie. I'm not super, I left all my foodies back up in Wisconsin. But I enjoy finding just the hole in the wall, the dimes, the places, and just to be able to go in and eat some exquisite food. I look up every one of them. There is rarely a restaurant or any place I go that I don't Google at all. And the crazy part of it is we're Googling everything, including churches. Yeah. Because if you go just your Google Maps, like people think Google Maps is just directions. No. Google Maps is full of information. Go to Google Maps, Google your favorite restaurant, Google your favorite, the church you work at, the church you go to, your favorite, the gym that you go work out, your job, and look at the information that pops up. It'll tell you the exact time of day that it's busy and when it's not so busy so that you can actually go. You got the reviews, you've got times that they're open, all of this stuff. Even if you have location services on, it'll tell you the last time you visited.
So think of how important that is for one specific type of church here for a moment, right? One specific type of church, I would argue more than any other. If what takes place inside your building doesn't match the outside of your building, this is more important than any others. So here in Kenosha, at one point there were Kenosha had the highest bars per capita of any city in the nation. Where I don't think we're the number one anymore, but we're definitely in the top 5. There's a lot of bars here in Kenosha, and so most of your really, really good food are actually at these bars. But some of these bars are frightening looking when you see them from the outside. There's one particular place in town has absolutely one of the best hamburgers you will ever buy, but it doesn't look like it from the outside. What goes on from the outside, it looks like it is that old school, dark, dingy, hey, one light and it's flickering kind of bar. Inside, it is bright, it is vibrant, the food's fantastic. I mean, all that stuff is there. And the online presence is what helps people go, oh, that's worth the risk of walking in this. I think there's only like 3 windows in the whole place, right? It's worth walking in there because the online environment has it. If your church has a look on the outside that doesn't match the experience on the inside. Now, I know the pushback on that is, well, but I want my people to invite their friends. Even if you invite me to go, I'm still going to go look first because my first impression will be, oh, I know what I'm walking into here. Right.
Yeah, I trust you and all. However, I do want to do my own research.
Yeah. That is a huge component, and the online presence. And I would say what makes the difference in the church that's been able to keep moving forward and the church that hasn't, if you're looking for a practical action step out of this. And I know a lot of you probably already have this, but if you don't have someone who is responsible for your online, someone who is responsible for your Instagram, someone who's responsible if you have a TikTok, someone who's responsible for your website, who's responsible for your online service. If you don't have a person, you don't have to have one person responsible for all of that, but you need people who are responsible for those components so that what goes on online, there is a person who is like, this is the point person to go back to kind of be the one who's ultimately responsible for that. If you look at anything that's going well in your church, it's because someone has taken ownership and responsibility of it.
Yes.
And that's going to hold true here too. So if you don't have that person, I would encourage you start looking for that.
Well, and Brian,
We're right now moving that direction. We've got a couple of teens who are phenomenal with what they do with TikTok. They've got a really good understanding of it. And so we've been interacting with them to go, all right, if we did it, what would it look like? How would it be built out? How do you
right.
shoot it? And letting them really run with that information, because they're already on there and they're already got quite a platform and following anyway.
Well, Brian, with understanding the power that our online presence, how our church looks online, right? What it looks like for us to be online, knowing that we're going to be Googled and searched for and appraised by anyone before they come in the doors. This is a position, or at least a part of a ministry, whatever you want to call it, that is absolutely worthy to not only have someone running it, but to pay for it. Like,
Yeah.
it's totally fine to if your cousin, or if your buddy is running your church website and it looks like your buddy has set up your church website, you know it, Pastor. You know, you're shaking your head like, we got he's here, he's running our website. It is totally fine to hire that out and to be able to pay for a service. I know my guy runs our Cease the Streets website's $50 a month. It's dirt cheap. Now there's some reasons why it's so low for us because of the ministry, but and that's with hosting email, hosting the website, updating everything, putting blogs out, changing stuff. It's fantastic. It is pennies, and it's absolutely impactful and worth every money, every dime that we spend on it. Please, if you hear us, please put some stock into this, because if there's 77%, 3/4 of every person that walks in the doors of a restaurant already knows everything about the restaurant, looked at the menu and picked out their dish. What do you think they're going to do when it comes to a place of spiritual worship? They're going to be looking with that intent at your church as well.
The two things it will do for you is this. When you put an investment into it, if you haven't been paying attention to it lately, been letting it slide, two things you're going to be doing for it is this. First thing is, you need to stop thinking about it as online or marketing. It's evangelism.
No.
This is an evangelistic technique, right? You are telling people about Jesus and how he can be, they move closer to him through what's going on in your church. So the first thing is, it is not a marketing. It is not, it's not an online. It's not a pro. This is a form of evangelism. That's the first thing. Second thing you need to recognize is this, is everybody that walks through your door for the first time is making a decision as to whether or not they're going to come back, right?
Yep.
Plain and simple, right? The old adage used to be they have 10 minutes. 10 minutes from the moment they hit your parking lot to determine if they're going to come back. For many people who are there for the first time, by the time that I'm putting their kids and stuff in church, they've made a decision as to whether or not to come back before the band plays a single note, right? That everything you're doing from that point on is trying to reinforce or overcome, right? So when you think about it from this perspective, on average, especially pre-COVID, 10 to 20% of your people who came for the first time would come a second time. With a solid online presence, that number will jump dramatically. Our church maintains around 60%. And a big part of it is because, as I mentioned earlier, in general, when someone shows up for the first time, it's actually the third or fourth time to engage with us. Your online experience makes it more likely that you are able to retain more of the people that come through your front door, because they already know what to experience. They already know what they're going to order, so to speak.
Right.
And it makes them, they've already made the tough decision to be able to be there. Now they're just going, is it as good as the picture shows?
Exactly, because that assumes that you are giving an accurate picture of what is taking place in the room on a Sunday morning.
Which is why you've got to invest. If you're going to put an online service out there, you need to keep investing in trying to make sure that what you are showing online is as close as you can get to what it feels like to be there too. This is why spending the time to learn online sound mixing really matters. We're working on this one a lot as a church right now. This is a big thing to us, finding the right software to be able to mix better, to create a better online experience. Making sure your cameras look as much as they can the same. Because I know some of you are using, an iPhone over here, and you're using a good camera over there, and you got your Black Magic sitting over there, and you got all these different ones going that you're running, and it's like, but making sure that they kind of blend well, so it looks as close as you can get. We have at our church, we use 2 Black Magics and 1 Sony, and the Sony is exceptionally high quality, and so we got to work to get the other 2 to look as much like that as possible. Make sure the colors look about right, that you don't have above the blip. But those things, all those little things matter, because if you show me a picture of a McDonald's cheeseburger and then I go buy a McDonald's cheeseburger, one of these 2 is a lie. And something's wrong. So if you're going to show me the picture online of the dish, I want it to look pretty close to that when I order it. Same thing's going to hold true in your church. You showed me online what you were like. Make it pretty close to that. Although in church world, it's usually the flip. The online is very poor in comparison to the in-person. And I've had friends tell me, Brian, man, if people come, man, we can get people to stay when they show up. We just don't know why we can't get people to show up. Like, because they already saw what you served.
Yeah.
And you served them something so poor online, they weren't willing to come taste it for themselves in person.
Yep. I mean, let's be honest. The only way the McRib is even halfway popular is because of the commercials. Because when you get that box and you open that up and you look at it and you're like, really? Like, yeah, that's exactly
that is not what I ordered.
It's not what I ordered.
But Pastor, that's why it's worth thinking about this, putting the investment into it. So what we're encouraging to do is have some people who are responsible for this. Don't go into cruise control coast mode. Stay focused on paying attention, because it's such a key component of telling others about Jesus. Recognize the benefits it's providing to you, because it does give you the ability to not always have to be there, or to really expand and expound on your teaching just by doing some location shots. Very simply. It allows you to be able to get more people involved, maybe people who couldn't be there personally. One of the benefits it provides, even in the sense of being able to ask friends who are good preachers, who really understand one theme really well, and you want to say, man, you explain this better than I do, let them record it, play it. You can do these components so you can truly expand what's there, and you will increase the number of people that want to come back to your church. Rather than having to spend all that energy getting people in the door and seeing 90% of them leave.
Right. And as we wrap up, Pastor, hear this. We're not telling you to go out and get the flashy, the cool colors, the amazing, the top of the line, the smoke, the projectors. No. All of this, everything that you're going to do with your online presence, go back and listen to the previous series about the 5 questions a healthy church can answer, and listen to the one on target audience. Who has God sent us to disciple? Listen to that one. Because once you go through that and you can define who God has sent us to disciple, who in our community is the sweet spot God has given us the strength to be able to go into and to disciple. Once you have that answer, it's going to dictate what your online looks like in everything that you do. It should dictate how your church service is laid out, how you speak, what you say, when you say it, how you communicate, all of it. So we're not telling you to go out and to be like the big flashy and the smoke machines and the strobe lights. No. If that's who God has positioned you to reach, okay, do that. But if God hasn't positioned you to reach that, and you have a different demographic and you live in a different community, then fine. That's who God has asked you to go reach. Go do that with excellence, but ensure that you have an online church presence that is excellent and matches what they're going to see in the building as well.
If you want a way to start that, and help your people understand it, simple process. Go to your online service, go to your website, go to your Facebook page. Just start with those 3 and ask yourself, does this look and feel like us?
Yeah.
Is this the same? Did they get a similar experience online as they would have got when they walked in the door? And if you can sit there and go, man, we are so, like, in person, it's so powerful, but online it's so thin. All right, then you know where to beef things up. On the other hand, online we look so good, like we look showy. Our Facebook's great, our Instagram's killing it, our TikToks are hilarious. But you show up and it's
dead.
not that. No. You want to be who you are. And so it's just a simple way to ask that question. And it's a simple way to help others go, hey, here's what we want you to do. We're not trying to get you to make us look like something we're not, right? We aren't Photoshopping this thing up, right? We want people to look and feel like they know what they're walking into when they walk in.
Yeah.
And that's a simple question you can ask, and other people can go, oh man, online that was horrible, but in person, I'm so glad I'm here. Okay, how do we improve that?
Yep. All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed this conversation about stretching the boundaries of what church online looks like past COVID. We're going to continue our conversation in this series on church post-COVID next week when we come back with a different topic about what does church look like now? What has changed? What needs to adapt? What are the things we need to double down on? We want to invite you back for that conversation. And like we said earlier, if you didn't catch the previous series, the 5 questions a healthy church can't answer, go back and listen to those. They were fantastic. But we'll see you next week on the Seats to Streets podcast. Take care.
Later.